All right, hey everyone. I wanted to do a quick video on explaining what we mean by the curve and the flattening of the curve and what that's all about, because I think there's a lot of confusion on this subject. So what we mean by this curve is that we are talking about a graph represented here by the bottom here, the x-axis, and which is the number of days. So this could be, starting at January, February, March, April, May, June, July, or whatever, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, however way we want to measure. But that's the number of days and the number of cases reported for that day or that week or that month. So this would be, 10 cases, 20 cases, 40 cases, 50 cases, however, per day. So for example, um, if we have, um, let's say starting here, and this is say the month of January, okay? In January, we may have seen, and I'm making these numbers up just for the sake of argument. We may have seen, maybe, 10 cases, okay? So this is 10 cases total in January, all right? So we put basically, here. And then say, in February, we see maybe another 10 cases, okay? This is per month. So 10 cases in January, 10 cases in February, and then we go to March, um, and we may see another 10 cases. So this is pretty flat. So 10 cases a month. So total here we're seeing 30 cases total. And so, we start to create this kind of line here, okay? So let's go into April, all right? Um, and in April, we start seeing a jump. We start seeing 20 cases, okay? So in April, we see 20 cases. So we're starting to move up here, okay? So then we go to May, and maybe we see 30 cases in May, okay? So now we're seeing this upslope, and this is what we're starting to see, this upslope of the curve, you see? And this is what we mean. So when we start seeing this type of thing, we know we're in trouble because numbers, keep going up. So let's say, uh, let's move to May. So let's go to June. Oops, sorry about the handwriting there. But let's say in June we see, we jump up to all of a sudden we're seeing 50 cases. Okay, so all of a sudden we're up here. Okay, so we're seeing this type of situation. So going on, what we are looking for and what some of the models are trying to predict is at which point are we going to see the number of cases per day start to flatten out? Meaning in July, okay, are we going to see maybe, another 50? Okay, because if we see 50, we're starting to see now this flattening or this peaking of the curve, and we see what we call a plateau. So let's say that in August, we start seeing now 30 numbers again, and now the curve is starting to go down. And say in September, now we're seeing back to, 20 cases, and we're starting to go down again. And then by October, we're back to like maybe 10 cases and so on. So this is the curve. This is what we mean by the curve. See, it's this the epidemiological curve. Number of cases per month, week, whatever, per day or month or week, whatever you want. So that's what we mean by the curve. Now, what we're talking about flattening of the curve is this. We want to make this peak as short as possible instead of as tall as possible, because when we have a tall peak, so say this peak, um, let's see, let's say uh, this peak is actually very tall and it goes down like that, right? Even though it's a shorter duration of time, okay, between January and June, we see the peak, up here with like, 500 cases or so, okay? The problem is that our hospital infrastructure may only be able to take care, up to maybe this many, there, this many people. This would be what our hospitals can handle. So what happens is when we have this huge peak right here, we cannot, our hospitals cannot handle it. And so a lot of these people are going to be left without health care because only this number here can be taken care of. Now keep in mind that when people come in January and in February and in March, they're usually in a hospital for weeks and weeks and weeks. So as more people start coming in, the hospital can't handle it. This is why we want to flatten this curve to something more like this purple one here, because this is manageable. Even though the total number of people may be the same that are going to the doctor, what we're seeing is they're coming in over a longer period of time. Okay, so as people, um, arrive, we have more time to treat before more people come in, and we can treat them, release them. Now we have our resources available, so the next batch of people can come in. So our our hospital infrastructure, and this changes. Okay, these numbers are completely made up. I'm making these numbers up just for the sake of the example here. But this line that represents our hospital infrastructure changes depending on your locality. So, uh, New York has more hospitals maybe than a small town in South Dakota. However, New York also has a lot more people. So, um, things like social distancing, hand washing, following the guidelines, wearing a mask, to protect others from you, is what's going to keep this curve from not getting too high too quickly, but also it helps keep the curve lower and shorter. Okay, so this could be maybe with the purple could be some social distancing, and the yellow could be no social distancing. Okay, but with, if we follow all of the guidelines, perhaps maybe we could even see a much shorter curve, okay, with less people. So with if we continue social distancing, we might be able to see this type of scenario with this blue line as opposed to this purple line, and certainly we don't want anything like the um, yellow line. So social distancing, the models, the mathematical models that we keep hearing about, that's what they're predicting. They're trying to predict where are we going to be in 3-4 months, and they put in all this data that we already know. Things like, okay, how many cases, what's the population dynamics, what kind of social distancing policies are in place, are they being followed? And the more accurate that data is, the more accurate our models become and more predictable. And we can then say, okay, if we continue on the track we're going, we're going to see this purple. But if we even do better than that, we might see more like the blue. However, if we stop right now, every single, any guidelines, or if we get the economy back started like Trump wants to do, we might see a huge peak like this. Now, here's the thing. Here's why this is also important. Sometimes what can happen is we get too over, hyped about this, and what can happen is this: we can see, okay, the we see a rise, and it's like, and then we start seeing flattening, and we're like, all right, this is fantastic. Okay, it's flat, it's flat. Ooh, it's going down. All right, let's open the economy back up. No more social distancing, no more, and all of a sudden we can start seeing this. So we can see two peaks. This is why it's important. Um, this is why it's important that we follow the guidelines until we really are sure that there's no case for reinfection. China right now is seeing exactly that. They're seeing a second wave of infections coming in. So this is why we got to be careful. And this is what we mean by the curve, and this is what we mean by flattening the curve, and this is how we know or how we can predict where we're going to be in a couple of months. That's why the models keep changing. The models will change based on new evidence and data. Now, if we have testing, okay, if we have testing and we do testing on a more widespread, we can actually then say which localities, which counties, which states can start easing up, or which, specific localities in these states can start easing up on, social distancing guidelines and things like that. But without testing, um, we got to assume that everyone's infected, and we got to continue this until we start seeing the numbers in the hospitals go down to the point where, okay, there doesn't seem to be any more spread in the community because nobody's coming in. This is what we call a lagging indicator. And what we want to do is, and lagging meaning after the fact. So we're basically behind the curve on this one, where we want to get in front of the curve, because we are only, our knowledge of how bad the infection rate is based off how many people are getting sick. It would be great to be able to prevent people from getting sick so that we can then better predict which localities are, but the only way to do that is by testing, which we are not doing. So this is what this is about, and this is why I trust the scientists over anyone else. It's because this is what they do. They model, they predict, and they make recommendations that I trust. Now, our models are not perfect, and oftentimes they could be wrong. However, it's the best way to do an analysis that is another piece of information that gives us, um, you know, uh, gives us more data to make, so that our leaders can then, and our politicians can make decisions off of. But it's this type of information that we need to pay attention to. So, anyways, this is all I really had to say, but just hopefully this helps people understand this idea of the curve. Feel free to hit me up if you have any questions, and stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask, and stay home. All right, stay home unless you absolutely have to go out. And if you do have to go out, then follow the precautions. All right? All right, see you later.